Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. So it's been hot up here in the Northeast, but we'll get through it. We're not whiny like, some of our Florida friends when it gets cold. I'm just saying. Um, but I need to do the usual reminders and introductions that you can like the Leather Elves on Facebook. You get notifications and check our Facebook page to catch surprise sales and pop up events, things like that. You can also follow the Leather Elves on Instagram and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, the other thing is, we're getting ready for the Rockstar Rescue Tour. So, you can follow the tour. These are all the places we're going, and there might be a couple of other surprise stops. So you'll have to check us out, see where we are, what we're doing, how we're doing. We'll do lives from the road. So I'm kind of excited. We're getting all ready. We've got boxes and boxes ready to go. So don't forget, support the Rockstar Tour if you're so inclined. And these are some of our supporters: Bonka, Aronico, New Zealand, A&E, Mighty Bird, Bird Gardens of Naples, Kemp Wood Products, Biodiversity Bird Blends. We have two new sponsors as well, Kiko's Parrots in Tacoma, Washington, and Dallas Parrots in Dallas, Texas. So a lot of people supporting the tour. It's very exciting, and we're hoping to bring a lot of cool stuff to the rescues. So I was recently out in Tacoma at Kiko's Parrots, and I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Paulette. Dr. Paulette, and that's I'm not even going to attempt the last name. Told me it's always Dr. Paulette, right? So we're going to go with
Yes.
just Dr. Paulette. Welcome. It's exciting to have you here. I can tell all of you who have never met her. Um, it was I was instantly infatuated with her attitude and her energy. And any of you that are up in that area, this is the doctor you want to take your animals to, because she has the most incredible energy that just vibrates.
Oh,
You really do. So I'm going to
thank
read your bio, and
you.
you guys to meet her and you'll see kind of what I'm talking about. But so Dr. Paulette grew up on a 7-acre farmette. I love that. That's what it says in your bio. In Marengo, Illinois, where she enjoyed caring for a variety of animals, ranging from hamsters to cows. She earned both her Bachelor of Science in Animal Sciences as well as her doctorate in veterinary medicine from the University of Illinois. After vet school, Dr. Paulette followed her love of the outdoors and relocated to the Pacific Northwest. Her special interests include small mammal exotics medicine, reptile medicine, preventative medicine, and internal medicine. In her free time, which after meeting her and talking to her, there's not a whole lot of that. Dr. Paulette enjoys rock climbing, hiking, kayaking, jigsaw puzzles, and spending time with friends. But most of all, Dr. Paulette enjoys spending time with her companion animals. So, um, I am so excited to have you here. It's nice to talk to a veterinarian who you can feel the passion. She
Oh,
and I talked for about an hour this morning, and it was very. I felt very good about having you on the live stream. So thank you.
yeah, and thank
So
you for having me here today. It was really honored to have you ask for me to speak. Just with everything you do in this life and this channel, it's really an honor to be here today.
Well, thank you. So, all right, so I gotta ask the original question. What made you decide to be a vet?
Oh my gosh, that is the original question. And I'm gonna go with a cheesy answer then. So I guess the cheesy answer is it starts obviously all of us is the love of animals, and the compassion for these animals and how can we help them. So when you start with that and as you kind of go through your animal journey, you start to learn the medicine of little things through the vet. And then I discovered my love of medicine, and that really sent me in the animal medical direction. Um, so that's where I am today.
And I think we talked a little bit today about how I think yes, it starts with that love of animals, but it's not
Yeah.
just that. You said it's the medicine as well. Can you
Yeah.
kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So, especially when I'm going off into this direction of vet, I we all love the animals, but our job here is to be an advocate for the animal through medicine. And again, that leaves you as a role too of an advocate for your animal as an owner. So I need to be here not because I love animals, but provide you really good medicine. And I think I think that's what my role of being a vet is for these animals, and where that came off, what I found from the love of animals and what I can do to help them or help you guys with these animals. Hopefully that
You
makes
you have
sense.
you have a fan club out there. Jacob says, "Paulette, you're awesome."
What?
So Jacob says, "Paulette, you're awesome." You didn't know that you had that whole fan club, like, did
I
you?
don't know either. It's
Did
too
you pay
funny.
these people? Come on.
I
So you
oh my
went
goodness.
from dog and cat to exotics. How
Mm.
does that happen?
Yeah, so it was a gradual thing. So I knew I wanted to go into exotics medicine, so I specifically went to that vet school to focus on that medicine. And my school was a good, strong uh, start to that. And then going into practice, I think people forget that we just don't know everything coming out. We kind of have to get our spiels down and get into the flow of how to be a doctor and manage these cases too. So getting out into practice, I was half dog cat, half exotics. Dog cat is a little more straightforward, cookie cutter. Get your spiels down, get your confidence in the cases, and I still got to do a little bit on the side with the exotics and start diving down that hole of really trying to focus on their medicine. But then eventually I did cross over to exotics only so I can continue to be the best doctor I can for them and really focus on that medicine and continually always learning, making sure I'm staying
Right.
updated.
And I think that's really important. And whenever I talk to people, I'll say, I learn every single time I present or every single time I interact with somebody in the industry. And they kind of look at me like, oh, come on. But I think it's true that you
It
have to keep,
is.
you know.
Yeah.
So do you do you have a favorite animal to treat? I know we don't want
Oh,
to get anybody upset with you, but
I know. Oh, that's a hard one. But if I had to choose, I'd go with a rabbit. I feel like the first cases that really got me involved with medicine were through my rabbits growing up. And it connected me to that, and it started my way into the exotic species track through vet school. So I think I'll choose rabbit.
all right. Nobody's going to hold that against you because we know that you
Thank
do an
you.
amazing birds too. Um, so let's kind of dive into stuff.
For
What
sure.
what are the most common things that emergencies slash issues that you see
Yeah.
with birds?
Yeah. As everybody probably knows, there is a big list. But probably if I had to list the top three, it would probably be like broken blood feathers, nails, things like that, something that's bleeding. So that's a common emergency. The second one is just ADR parrot. So that's ain't doing right parrot. It's a very general term, and it can mean a lot of different things. But you notice your bird's off and it's not feeling good. So usually coming in pretty fast when you notice that. And then the third one is probably egg binding. We'll say
Okay.
that problem with eggs.
So I want to take each of those and
Yeah,
kind of go through them a little bit. So
great.
broken blood feathers and nails. I mean, that can be
Yeah,
overwhelming as a pet owner
yeah,
because it's like it feels like it's gallons of blood, right? I
yeah.
mean, so what's the so triage at home and where do
Right.
we go from there? What do
Yeah.
you suggest?
So yeah, that is great question and a great start. I do feel like any of these bleeding emergencies, especially if it's from a feather or a foot, uh, that is one thing where I think you guys can help your bird get there, by helping maybe control that really active bleeding. And we can talk through it if you'd like, but that is one thing that you guys can start at home. It'll kind of go through a slow little leak still. That's when you try to get it into me and wait for me to pull that feather, wait for me to do something else. But you guys can help that bird get there and stop the bleeding, the heavy bleeding.
So how do we do that?
Great
Walk us through
question.
that.
Yeah. So I guess toe is going to be the easiest one, where if you accidentally cut it or they break it, assuming it's a clean break, that's where we'll talk about this later, of where you maybe need to start to learn to restrain your bird, start just packing that quick stop in. So you can use anything at home, but have something to control bleeding. Quick stop, cornstarch, flour, anything. When that toenail's bleeding, you just take that and pack it in. And that's the key, is you're packing it in and holding pressure. And that's probably the most basic. I would just kind of hold it there for 2 minutes, pack more in if you need to, but get the bleeding to basically stop. Some people still freak out with feathers, of you'll still get
Mhm.
this slow leak of the blood, um, but the active hemorrhage is stopped, and you've controlled it enough by just getting it to that slow drip phase. Um, with a feather, it becomes a little more challenging. So it's easy when you accidentally cut the feather, and you have a nice clean blade break or cut. That's when you act the same as a toe. Start packing it in the feather shaft and get that bleeding to stop. And again, hold it for 2 minutes, get that clot there, and then you can go to us.
Mhm.
It's hard when they do crack that blood feather. You might not have a clean cut. It could be cracked on that shaft. So that's a little more challenging. If you can see it or you can visualize it, the most ideal is to take some kind of clamp, or even, well, we're in my camera, even pinching it with your finger,
Mhm.
above the crack, closer to the body, and hold it. Get that clot there. Get it to slow down somewhat, and then get them to me, because you can have that outcome a lot better with that control.
So with the quick stop,
Yeah,
we don't want people using that on like body wounds. Am I
correct.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
And can you explain why, just in case people don't know?
Yeah, so depending on a body wound, depending what happened to make that, if it's an injury, if it's a break, um, we don't want to be putting that quick stop in a body cavity or a bone cavity if it is really bleeding. Um, eh, if that's really bleeding, it is going to be a little scary, um, and they might not do as well. But if that bleeding is not so great, but you just see blood and it's not active, put them, we'll talk about this later, put them in an incubator box and get them to the vet. But don't be shoving things in body cavities that we don't know what's going on. And yeah, you can damage some tissue that way too. So I think that's the most
Jody
simple answer.
suggested surgical clamp, if you have them,
Yeah,
like the surgical clamp, a hemostat, and to me, that's something that you should have in a first aid kit anyway.
absolutely.
So if you've got that, grab that, do that. But I think bottom line, we want to stop the hemorrhaging, and then
Exactly. Go to
so do you suggest people are like calling you, having their partner call you while they're doing this? How does that
some
process look?
Yeah, so sometimes we just have people running in the door. Some people just don't know to get that to stop. So it's a lot of run ins. And that's where you sometimes can see those iffy outcomes because they don't know this first things. Sometimes we do just get phone calls, and that's where the front desk comes as a triage. When we're not open, that's what the ERs are there for. Preferably to call ahead, but run in, they can help triage you over the phone and help you get it to stop. But that's how we usually get it presented. But hopefully, sharing this and expanding this, people now know to stay calm and stop the
Mhm.
bleeding and then get to me.
Yeah. And I mean, the stay calm piece, we always say that. And I think it
Hmm.
can be tough. I mean, because
It
like I
can
said,
be.
when birds bleed, like when your bird breaks a blood feather, it feels like it's gallons. Like all the blood in their
Yes.
body must absolutely be gone.
Yep. They're
Um, but
so small.
but I mean, but that's, we want to stop it. but we don't want to
Yeah.
panic at the same time.
Ex-
So,
exactly.
um, and then when they come to you,
Yeah.
what kind of happens then? With with a
Yeah.
broken what happens?
Yeah. So at that time, if it's active bleeding, we get it to stop. Hopefully, you got it to stop. But at that time, I assess what's happening. How is the blood? How is the feather broken? What feather is it? A lot of times, being on the vet side, I will opt to pull those feathers,
Mhm,
especially if it is a blood feather. And then depending on what feather go we need to pull, depends on,
mhm.
maybe do we need a little extra pain control, anesthesia, um, because some of those can be hard feathers to pull and very painful feathers to pull, or detrimental effects of pulling. So really good to leave it to the professionals in that case.
So you don't suggest that people pull blood feathers on their own?
No.
I mean, I know a lot of the people who are listening have been doing this for a lot of years, and so
Yeah.
may have some experience with that, but
Yeah.
average parrot owner, probably not a good idea to pull a blood feather. Got
Exactly.
it.
Yep. And again, exactly what you were saying. If you've been in this business, you've done some basic easy feathers, do it for sure. But some of the primary feathers or the tail feathers can be more painful or attached directly into bone. So kind of just do what you feel is in your expertise, but try to balance it out. See what you need.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind know your limitations and your
Yes.
abilities, but know your
Yeah.
limitations kind of first.
Exactly.
So all right, so that we're not, that's not the giant crisis, the broken blood feather or the broken nail. We're going to deal with that. We've got it now. We talked to
Yeah.
Dr. Paulette and we're feeling okay. Um, yeah, Michelle says she's not willing to damage her trust bank by trying that with Shadow. So she
Yeah.
has Shadow the cockatoo. And then Janice, who's been doing it for a lot of years. No offense, Janice, because she's really young. She's been doing it since she was a baby. She said, "You won't catch me pulling a blood feather. Um, Dabney will be wearing the hemostat for a while." Yeah, I mean, and I think
Oh
that's
yeah. Yeah.
being honest with what you can and can't and what you're comfortable with, because you don't want to do something, get halfway through, you know pulling a feather and then be like, "Oh, I can't
Right.
do this, I got to get to the vet." It
Right.
Make that decision before you go too far, I think, is some, you know yeah. Joanna, who
Yeah.
owns Bird Fever in Indianapolis, says hemostats to the rescue. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's so we all need to everybody Amazon's gonna be flooded tonight because everyone's gonna go and buy hemostats. And you don't have to
Yes.
buy the expensive ones, get some.
Yep.
So, all right, ADR birds, let's talk
Oh,
about it.
yes. Ain't doing right.
I
So,
love that.
I guess how to recognize them first. But it's such a broad category. Um, but it's anything that is not normal with your bird. Your bigger emergencies, you start noticing it sitting on the bottom, fluffed up. Sometimes it could be subtle signs where he seems totally normal, but he's just starting to get urates, stained on the tail. What's going on there? Maybe you're seeing gradual weight loss, or sleeping more, or doing something that, like, out of their normal pattern that they really haven't been
Mhm.
doing. So, like, not wanting to come out of the cage, or just something's off. Their attitude's off, maybe. Just something that is not normal for your bird. Your bird.
And, we talked about that too,
Yeah.
that it's really a team effort.
Yeah.
It may be something that, you know, you I would know it's not right for my bird, but, somebody else might not. Or I bring it to you and you're like, "Well, this is okay. This is
Right.
normal behavior." As a veterinarian,
Right.
you're listening to your clients' owners.
Exactly.
That's so important. And Tiffany says, "How can we help our DVM?" Tiffany, I promise we're going to get to that.
Heck
It's just
yes.
further down the outline. Did you feel the outline? Uh, we'll get to that, I promise. So, we talked about fluffed up. We talked about urates on the tail. What are we looking? What kind of things should people be watching for? It's just not right for your bird, but what are some real red flags that people should kind of be looking for?
Yeah, I guess I hopefully I'm answering this right, but hopefully kind of what I listed. Fluffed up bird, weight changes, even things that you think are normal, it's been happening for a long time, but it's different how it used to be. That is an indication of something being wrong. So you kind of need to know. Yeah. Does that answer it?
Yeah, it does. And so I've always heard the rule of thumb is a 10%
Yeah.
weight loss. Is
Yes.
that,
Correct.
I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, that is
Um,
100% where I really start to get worried. Um, I think we'll mention this later, but it is really nice when people actually do weigh at home because then you might be able to catch it before it gets to that 10%, but you're seeing that gradual pattern.
yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is too, so I bring in my bird, not, something's off, something's a little weird.
Yeah.
Are you gonna look at so what are you gonna look at that point? If I come in and I say, "Dr. Paulette, the bird's been kinda, like, puffed up on the perch, a little bit lethargic." What are you gonna look at that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, starting with a physical exam, sometimes you can find things there or not. But birds, they can be really okay on the outside, but subtle things are starting to change and something's going wrong. So, that's where we have the power to do those diagnostics, blood work, gram stains, x rays. And that's where we dive into these cases and figure out the puzzle of what is going on with this bird. And we'll talk about this later, but teamwork comes in a huge piece of this. I'm only seeing so much in the clinic. I see all the diagnostics, but you're the one seeing all the little subtlety changes.
Absolutely, and I think that's important, and it is that teamwork, it is that back and
Yeah.
forth, that's so important in, doing, like, behavior modification too. I
Yeah.
can't you can say to me, "Well, this is happening," and it just there's no really good reason why it's happening. Well,
Right.
I can believe you, or I can say, "Well, let's look at the bigger picture and what's happening," because
Yep.
I only get when I'm talking to people, I'm not in their homes, it's
Yeah.
usually a Zoom call or it's they come into somewhere where I am and it's about, you know, let's talk about what's happening, not just the incident. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as a veterinarian, you're doing the same kind of investigative work, if you will, that
Yes.
okay, this is the snapshot, but
Yep.
what's the bigger picture?
Yes. And that's you hit that on the head so well. And I was gonna say the same for you. Your behavior work is the same as the medicine. You have a problem and you have to see that full scope to figure out and sift through what's there and not.
Right, and so yeah, so you guys gotta be out there, you've gotta be telling your vets, that kind of information and really, offering that, and let me ask you this, Dr. Paulette, and we didn't talk
Yeah.
about this, so I don't wanna blindside you. Um,
Okay.
do I there's a point where a client comes in and you know that they're not being straight with you.
Yeah.
Does that I mean, does it help you? I mean, it's gotta be frustrating, to not have the whole picture, to not
Yeah.
have to know and if somebody came in and said, "Look, I screwed up. I've been doing something wrong." Are you
Yeah.
gonna judge at that point, or are you just gonna try to help fix it?
No, that's our duty of being your veterinarian, of trying to work alongside you to figure out what's this problem, where we went wrong, how do we fix it. Even you know personal beliefs and the medicine of what I would do for my animal might not be the same for them. I am here to
Mhm,
be an advocate for the animal and provide all these different ways you can help your animal, and I will support you through the gold tier, through the silver tier, and that's my job, to be able to work along beside you and make sure we're covering your pet, but also covering what you can realistically do too, or willing to tell me, or anything down that line.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing is that
Yeah.
it's about honesty, it's about the dialogue, and Jody says, build a good relationship with your vet.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Jody.
I love, I had heard about you before I met you, and I really think that's it's not always possible to have a super relationship with your vet, but as long as there's dialogue, I think that's,
Yes.
so,
Yes.
um, all right. So somebody sees that the bird's just not doing okay. We talked
Yeah.
about the things they're looking for. Um, what kind of triage do they need to do at home
Yeah.
to before they get them to you guys?
Yeah, and that's a great question too, because as you probably every probably most bird owners experience this somewhat, where sometimes there's not a lot of bird option vets available. ERs are sometimes a little more scarce, uh, whether they can see the bird or not due to capacity or just because it's a bird. You're probably finding yourselves more in situations where you might not be able to run into a vet or an emergency vet, and you have a few hours at home where you might have to hang out with your bird, and it's really not feeling good. What can you do at home? So honestly, this is pretty basic. There's not a ton, but what you can do is a sick bird. Heat support is fantastic. So basically, you're going to create a home little makeshift incubator where he can sit in there, not have to use energy to keep himself warm. You want to get that. So yeah, so you can do that, and then a lot of people stress when they put their birds in the incubator that are they getting enough nutrition? They're not eating still, they're not drinking. That is okay. My number one recommendation is don't try to syringe feed. Offer them, you can, if you're stressed about it, offer them crushed food off of a spoon or anything they'll eat off of spoon, little dishes in there, heavy water dish, little food dish. Let them do it themselves. And if they're really not eating, it's okay. Just keep them in that incubator, keep them calm, and just wait for the vet because there's a lot safer ways to get nutrition in. Don't panic about that right away.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's important. You said a heavy water dish, and I think
Yeah,
that, is important, because we don't want them fall. If a bird's not doing well, you don't want it
right,
kind of falling down in the water and tipping things over. And so
right.
the whole just one comment I want to share with you that
For
Janice
sure.
Lang said. Janice has been in. She was in the veterinary field, doing office management and things like that. For
Yeah.
many years, and she said most clients don't understand that diagnostic testing needs to be done to determine what's wrong. They tend to see
Yeah.
the dollar signs and object. And I think that's it's tough being on this side of the counter or this side of the exam room, and you get that giant bill. And it's and Taylor is a wonderful, he's a geneticist who's doing I don't know if you met Taylor when he was out in Tacoma. I think he was out in Tacoma. He's doing all kinds of sequencing, DNA sequencing of birds, but he says everywhere
Oh,
seems super expensive. And
yeah.
it's true, but I think, you and I talked about there, you personally don't have a lot of control over that.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of got to roll with it. And it's not just, I mean, all of us experience insurance issues with our own medical and things like that. We just kind of have to go with it. And like Janice said, those tests, do need to be done.
Yeah.
So
And
just,
a
I wanted
comment
to bring.
Yeah, and a comment with that too, just in case if you do have to bring your bird to the vet, it sometimes helps, and this is and can be the teamwork part where if you know you only have a certain amount of money for this problem, or let's say I don't want to spend more than $500 this first time, tell your vet that. I
Mhm.
do think a vet that really teamworks works with you will take that in consideration. And I would love to do all the diagnostics in the world, but sometimes that just isn't possible, and that's okay, and that's where we have to also be really understanding. But you everybody else does too, because we're trying to work up this case and figure out what's wrong. But it is totally understandable if you do set financial goals for us, or things to stay in between, because we can still try to help and work together to figure things out.
Absolutely. And I mean, Tiffany just, she just brought up a good example. She said, we had a
Yeah.
client come in with their puppy. The puppy's eyes were dilated, head tilt, lethargy. She asked the question, is there anything the puppy could have gotten into? Drugs? It's okay. We need to help the puppy. You can tell me. They finally told her it was pot. And they were able to help the puppy because they
Yeah.
got the truth, from the owner. And sometimes people just, we need to step outside what's comfortable sharing, if it's
Hmm.
something like that, and because it's not fair to you guys to be like, oh no, I don't think they got into anything.
Right.
Um, we're kind of deviating a little bit, but that's okay. Taylor has a question. Do you know, is there pet insurance that's good for exotics?
Oh, um, exotics options are more limited still, and um, I think I only know one place that has exotic medicine. Maybe there's one or two now, and I don't feel like sometimes the insurance coverage is real great.
Mhm.
So if you do find one, really press into it of what they cover. Is it annual blood work and exams, or is it just emergencies? But I do think we get screwed a little bit on the exotic side of insurance. That has also rising costs, and the coverage sometimes is not worth it.
Right.
But still
Um,
try, maybe
okay.
look into it.
Yeah, I mean, and Taylor, when you find that, just let us know.
Yeah.
Tiffany suggested scratch pay, care credit, get it now.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I know we've used care credit for some veterinary stuff we had to have done. So yeah, no, it does work. Okay. So we talked about, let's talk about what the homemade incubator looks like.
Yeah.
Um,
That sounds
just because
great.
yeah, let's do that because I want people, it sounds like, oh, that's kind of a daunting thing, but it's pretty
Yeah.
easy, right?
Yeah, it is super easy. So basically, you're going to create your hospital box with, you're first just going to take any storage container. Make sure it is big enough or small enough for your bird size. That being particularly said, if it's big or small, make sure that bird maybe can live in there for a couple of days. Maybe it's injured itself and the vet says keep it, in that hospital container. So, not too big, not too small. You're just going to take a storage container. You're going to drill some breathing holes, oxygen holes all around it so you have good ventilation through it. A good trick for that, too, when you're drilling through plastic is, and I think I don't know these terms very well, but instead of your forward drill motion, sometimes it cracks the plastic when you go through. When you put the drill in reverse and you push it into the plastic, it makes it a little easier to drill through and doesn't crack the plastic as you drill through it. So that's a
Huh,
fun little tip. Yep.
it is.
I've heard people like melting holes into it. So that's a fun thing. So you're going to make your hospital box with your breathing holes. Then you're going to make sure have set aside a good pair of towels, whether it's going to be to pad the bottom. If they're really sick, you can make like a little rolled up towel in a U-shaped pattern to make a little nest to rest their keel on. Um, and then you can have a few extra towels for handling in there. So hospital box, a good set of towels, and then the most important part to make it a true incubator and to keep that temperature up, you're just going to take a regular heating pad, and it's going to be outside the box, and the box is going to sit on it. And you don't want the bird directly on the plastic. You don't want so you're going to have towels separating everything, but make sure that temperature is getting through. And you're actually shooting for an ambient temperature about 80 to 84 in the box, and that will allow the bird not to use so much calories for keeping its heat and temperature while it's sick.
Hmm. And I think that, like when we were talking and I said, what can we do? The first thing you said was keep it warm.
Yeah.
And I think, sometimes we forget about that, because it's like, oh, I don't want to move him. I want to let him, be where he is, blah, blah, blah.
I,
This is really important, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Um, I think, we may have, I don't know, we might be able to come up with a picture, and if we do, I
Yeah.
will, you can put it in the comments. Not probably not right away, but I will see if I can get some pictures of that because it's real. I mean, it's super easy to do and it doesn't cost a fortune. And, I think just about anybody can do it. And, if you got to cut a hole with a knife because you don't
Do
have
it.
your drill or just do it. And have it. And the thing is, too, Dr. Paulette, one of the things I like to tell people is be prepared. We just did
Yes.
2 weeks ago, we did evacuation planning. And,
Good.
you're not building this when your bird's sick.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Hopefully you've got it, and you put it in the closet or you put it down in the basement, whatever. And you've got it in case, God forbid, you ever need it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you even said it too when we were previously speaking about this. This is getting a little off topic, but going with your evacuation plan, have that box set up ready just in case if your bird has to live with it in it for a few days for an evacuation. Have your food set aside. So make it ahead of time because when your bird's sick, you'll definitely need it then
Yeah.
for an
No, definitely.
evacuation.
So I can tell Janice has done this before. She said sometimes putting masking tape or duct tape on the area you're drilling in, it will help prevent the cracking. Just don't press
Oh,
real
that's
hard when drilling or reversing the drill. So using the reverse drill and then putting a piece of duct tape or masking tape might help with that as well.
that's
Um,
great.
Michelle says her vet uses one of those plastic aquariums to transport from the exam room to the back office at vet visits. One of those would work for small birds with no drilling needed. There we
Yeah,
go.
you could get your hand on
So,
it. Yes.
but yeah, it's kind of the keeping it warm, keeping it. I mean, do you kind of want to limit movement as well? I mean,
Yeah.
probably if your bird's not doing great, it's not moving a lot, but how do they handle that?
Yeah. So basically, kind of going back to the thing I've already said is it's basically about conserving energy for these birds. A sick bird is using a lot of energy. We know they all have a crazy high metabolism. So any kind of limiting movement where they don't have to focus balancing and perching, where they don't have to spend energy on regulating their temperatures, that's your goal with a sick bird, is conserving that energy so you have energy to fight if there's even just stress from the appointment that comes along. Because they're that love they love getting that energy and they love all the sicknesses really take it out of them.
Yeah. And I think, a really important point that you just brought up was the perching. So I think
Yeah.
sometimes we go, oh, they're birds. We got to put a perch in the box. We got to put a perch in the carrier. If you've got a sick bird, that's not what you want.
Yeah.
Am I, yeah, you
Yeah.
want them to just, excuse me.
Rest.
So yeah, rest and I love the idea with the towel to rest their keel if that's, if you're seeing them having a hard time staying upright, that's something that could help. So yeah.
Then.
Um, all right, and then get them to you guys. And so as far as in a situation like that, um,
Yeah.
what kind of diagnostics are usually necessary for you to deal with? I bring in my bird, it's lethargic, it hasn't been eaten great. Um, what kind of diagnostics are we looking at that point? And I
Yeah.
know you can't, so we don't have a bird that I can actually show
Right.
you. What kind of things are we looking at?
Right. No, I think I can make a good generalization and with that. So that's a great question. So I do think, the older this is gonna sound great, but the older your bird, probably the more diagnostics you need because the more disease processes we're thinking about. Is it gonna be more cardiovascular health that we're worried about or fat? So with really intense cases, breaks, older birds, you probably will get x-rays to assess that cardiovascular health for any masses, enlarged organs. Blood work is huge with birds. We've talked about already where they seem pretty okay on the outside, but inside something's not going right. So blood work can really be a window into the inside for these birds. And then another another really important diagnostic could be just looking at the poop bacteria.
Mhm.
And we can get into that now or later, but you'll also probably have a couple of poop tests when you're there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can do that now if you want. I mean, so we could do a whole
I
session
know.
on poop. I mean, maybe we should do that, because we're definitely gonna have
Maybe.
you back. But so talk to us about poop, Dr. Paulette. What
Yes.
are we
Uh,
what are we looking for? What are you looking for?
Yeah. So poop is the best thing ever. It's so important through all species, especially when you're getting into exotics. And birds specifically really hold a really and citizens, I should say, the specifically the parrot group really hold a very unique poop composition. So with a perfect picture perfect citizen or sorry parrot, same thing, when you look at a perfect poop, it should be actually 100% positive bacteria. And if you think back to our poop, the dog's poop, the cat's poop, the horse poop, goat poop, whoever's poop, um, they will actually have mixed bacteria, gram positive and gram negative. And that's natural for us. A bird, it's not natural. Um, a bird that we just being in our environment, that bird is going to be exposed naturally to some gram negative bacteria. And that's actually okay. They can handle it, they can keep low numbers in their GI, as long as their system has that good bacteria to knock it down. But in signs of illness, whether it's something that's been chronic and it overgrows the gram negative bacteria, or it's primarily just gram negative overgrowth. We got some contamination from somewhere, it overgrew, and now it's affecting the liver. Really seeing what their bacterial composition of the poop is can really help your case, and know how to support them. We can also see a couple of other things in bird poop too. So one, you can always look for yeast. So yeast in the GI tract, we don't want it to overgrowth or be budding. So definitely looking for yeast. And then budgie people out there, you probably know this one too well, the avian gastric yeast or megabacteria. We also look for that in the gram stains. So again, it's really good overview. The poop is a really good overview, I think, of the whole systemic health. Yeah,
So, all right. So there's a lot that goes into kind of putting all the pieces together to figure out how you're going to then treat that bird. Um,
exactly.
so, all right. So egg binding.
Yeah,
What are we? So how do we figure out that that's what's happening and decide and know that okay, we've got to go see Dr. Paulette. How do we get
yeah.
there?
Yeah, so that I feel like is a little bit of a cheat answer because it kind of goes back to the ADR bird of, so the easiest thing that you'll know, like, whoa, that's egg binding, is when your bird's sitting there fluffed up trying to strain. It looks like it's trying to poop in the corner. And a lot of people get that one pretty quick of my bird has egg binding. And sometimes the bird's straining for another reason, and we all, I don't hope it's egg binding, but any kind of straining in the back end or sitting fluffed up, check them for eggs, especially if they're a female.
Okay. And so we determine that's what it is. We go, okay, that,
Yeah.
I listened to Dr. Paulette on the live stream and I know that's what it is. Same triage. We keep them
Yep.
warm.
Put them in the incubator. Yeah, keep them warm, keep them dark, let them see if they can work that egg out. This is There is an older medicine practice or home practice where they just used to say, like, rub coconut oil on the cloaca a little bit. You can lube it up a little bit, but don't be going in too much in any cavities or anything. But sometimes that's enough even to stimulate them to want to fully expel that egg. But if you put them in there and after a couple of hours they're not doing much, that's when you got to head to the vet. Egg binding can be pretty detrimental for long periods of time. um, their kidneys actually sit, really deep in that pelvis. So when an egg's going down and just sitting there, can put pressure on that kidney, and you can really mess up kidneys in egg binding. And that's why it's so important to try to identify that your bird's not doing well, whether it's an egg or not, and get to the vet. Because if it is an egg, save those kidneys.
Right, right. And I think that's, with all of these issues, we keep coming back to get to the vet,
Yeah,
kind of stabilize and get to the vet.
exactly.
Because, so if I let something go for a couple days and then I say I'm going to come, so my chances are going down of a
Yeah,
successful intervention, right? Okay.
exactly.
Um, and I think so some people could say, "Oh, well, that's because she's a vet. That's why she's saying that." But I mean, when you really think about it, any illness is just, it's probably just going to get worse. By the
Right.
time, we see it in our birds as a prey animal, by the time
Yeah,
we see it, it's probably pretty advanced that they're letting
exactly.
us see that.
Exactly. That's a great point that you make too. Yeah.
Okay, so what do we need to have in our emergency kit, in our evacuation bag, whatever we're going to call it? What kind of things you've got to have this if you have a bird? What are we looking
Yeah.
at?
So we already listed of quite a few. I think that incubator setup. So all the tools for that.
Mhm.
Like you were saying, food, water rations for a couple of days. Somebody in a previous presentation or recent presentation, they make whole sheets for the birds of all the medications, all the foods, every previous problem. They keep that with their bag. We don't have to go that extensive, but at least keeping some medicines or the list of medicines your bird needs for a few days. Uh,
Mhm.
we already mentioned water. Um, you add in some. I can't think. Quick stop.
Well, well, and Nick just added that he needed Pedialyte, um, or Gatorade. I mean, we talked about this at Jody's store. The bird had stopped up its water bottle and was severely dehydrated.
Yeah.
So how do we handle something like that?
Yeah. So with ooh, sorry, hang on. So with that, I think that we got to be careful with the Pedialyte. So you can do really dilute amounts. I think is fine, but it we shouldn't be giving them so much Pedialyte because it's that osmotic balance, and that does have sugar in it. And you can really
Mhm.
get a good osmotic flow going if you feed them too much of that. But a little bit can help and give a little bit of a perk. Um, but I would say definitely keep it away from baby birds and formula. Those should not mix. You can give your
Right.
adult bird a little bit, but not too much.
Mhm. Okay. So we should all have scales. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
Um, yeah, Nick said he agrees, but this was a dire situation that he was describing. Um,
100%.
so with the scale, how often are we weighing our birds? Suggested.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
So that is one of the things that if you guys do that at home, you can sometimes catch the mildest conditions that are starting to creep up and try to catch them early. So if you start weighing your bird weekly, great. If you have a bigger flock and that's not realistic, every 2 weeks it's better than nothing, and actually
Mhm.
every 2 weeks is still pretty good. Um, and again, if you really want to go real far out, even a month, just trying to get some basic patterns in their life could bring
Mhm.
you a long way.
And I think too, that's a training issue too. I mean, getting
Yeah.
a bird that's willing to step up on a scale, that's willing to, be weighed, make that part
Yeah.
of the training routine.
Yes.
And Elaine says Saturday is weigh here. That's the weigh day. That's awesome. Elaine is an
Yes.
amazing bird parent. She's got Michelle's bird has some issues, so twice a week at her house. So
Woo!
yeah, these guys are
Great.
amazing. I told you this was a good group,
I
so,
know. This is
uh,
great.
they really are. So let's talk about the teamwork. That's
Yeah.
how I wanna end our session. Let's talk
Yeah.
about what should people we talked a little bit about what they should expect, the physical
Yeah.
exam, the blood work. Um, what what do what do you need from
Yeah.
us when we
Yeah.
come into the
Oh, that is a great, perfect closing thing here. So I think again, these cases are about teamwork. You're telling me those subtleties, the patterns in the life. So, and whether it's with weight, whether it's behavior, whether it's eating, you keep communicating that to us. So I think that's a great thing. But there are a few other things that you can probably do too. So one other thing, two other things would be, one, just maybe practice with towels and toweling your bird, handling your bird. So maybe they're not so stressed at the vet clinic. They'll always be a little stressed. I feel like it's just a stranger. Uh, but do that so they kind of get used to it. Another thing that helps me, but I guess more you, I'm sneaking this one in, is syringe training or spoon training. Because when your bird gets sick and you have to give it medication, it's already stressful that they're sick. But maybe it makes it a little easier for you to be able to get that medicine in a little easier.
Mhm.
So that really helps too. And then repeating myself, but again, going back to the weights, bring those weights and the patterns with that. All that information is so helpful.
And yeah, I really think it's about keeping good records. I mean,
Yes.
isn't like, wouldn't you love it if every client came in
Yeah.
with like my weights for the last, 6 months, and here's my, I've noticed a little change in this, and this is what we're eating, and wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be
Um,
amazing.
I think we need to start this revolution, that we
Yes.
we as pet owners, that we kind of try to help out the veterinarians, so that we
Yeah.
we go in there and we've got we have some of the answers, because when you're trying to figure out that puzzle, it
Yeah.
helps if you have all the pieces. I mean,
Yes.
kind of a lame analogy, but that's, I really think it is like putting together the pieces of a puzzle. And you
Really
like
is.
jigsaw puzzles. See, this all works.
Exactly. It all makes sense now.
And you talked about, practicing with towels and things like that. Um, what about, so restraint?
Yeah.
Is that something that you can do? Oh, and Michelle's vet likes to have a few pictures of poop, when he stresses and
Yeah.
when he goes in. Oh, see, there we go.
That's smart.
Since he does shit when he goes in. So having a
Yeah.
picture, before it's crisis time is helpful. So
Exactly.
she's got all weird pictures on her phone, because she's taking pictures of poop. But
We
I mean,
love poop pics.
I think a lot of us have those. So restraint. I mean,
Mhm.
what are we looking at?
Yeah.
What kind of things can we do to get birds more comfortable with that?
Yeah. So there can be obviously so many different levels of this, and definitely practicing this. It can hold some risk with the bigger birds, so start easy. Getting them used to the sights of towels, whether holding it up, being around them. If you do hug sessions at night or something, put a towel up and start kind of letting them sit there for a second and hold them if they want to go, and then release once they relax. Those
Mhm.
little things to start not identifying as a towel as a catch up, or sometimes start to just get used to it, feeling it on them. And then you can really go into more advanced things of truly learning how to safely catch up your bird for yourself and the bird. Um, so I think just even the sight of towel is going to be great.
I mean, I think, I've worked with some birds and done like playing games with a towel.
Yes.
It's the hold it up, put it down, hold it, and
Yeah.
then reinforce for getting close to it. Maybe you put it
Yeah.
on, on a flat surface. Nick plays peekaboo with Cheerios, and Jody says, play
Yeah.
peekaboo with the towel. There we go. It's coming even a couple steps closer. Michelle plays Birdie Burrito. All
That's
these great
perfect.
ideas. That's the thing, and it's got to be reinforcing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So Vlad says he knows how much the healthy birds weigh, from vet checkups, and
Yes.
absolutely, and keep that
Yeah.
record and know, what's the good range and things like that. Um, but I think, putting the towel in your lap, Tiffany says, you can
Yeah.
definitely one step closer. I mean, sometimes with behavior modification or any kind of behavior change, even
Yeah.
one step, leaning towards the towel can be reinforceable, depending
Yeah.
on what level you're starting at. But so we've got, let's keep some good records. Let's work on desensitizing. Let's work on some syringe training.
Yeah.
What about, so I'm, as we're talking, I'm thinking even target training could
Yeah.
be a good thing, because then, if your bird
Yeah.
responds to a target, um, when you go to the vet, you take that with you, and you can target a bird's head up and they lift their head up and you can kind of check things. So, I mean, that's, people are like, oh, it's just target training, but it has so many different applications. So that,
Exactly.
and then anything else. So what's the, what do we need to do to help you? Anything else? I mean, we're kind of wrapping up, but what
Yeah.
can we as pet owners do to help our veterinarians?
Yeah. So I guess it's again a good recap of today. So one, your weight checks, your patterns of the observations of your bird. Um, maybe let's see, observations. Winking. So just teamworking, creating a team, and sometimes it's. I'm gonna skip a little bit, but establishing care as a vet, so with a vet, so you have that connection to them. Start having a vet review what you're doing, starting to get that relationship, so when something does go wrong, it's a lot
Mhm.
easier for you also to communicate and get into a vet. um, but again, advocating for your pet through the weight checks, through the observations you're doing is all going to help us so much. And what Robin was saying is just being really clear of what's going on, what are you seeing, your financial limitations. That's what teamwork is about.
Yeah. And I think too, what I hope people got out of tonight, is that you guys are human beings too.
Yeah.
And, where everybody's kind of there for the same reason. We're all there because either, this bird needs some help, or, which we didn't talk about and we probably should have, well bird visits. I
Yeah.
mean, 100%. It needs to happen.
Yeah.
And we left that out, but I think, but talking to your veterinarian, because you are there for the same reason.
Exactly.
So,
And it's starting to
uh,
try to establish that relationship early. That's another way you can spend the well vet visits. But that I think that is also important, getting baseline blood works, making sure there's nothing underlying secretly before it explodes. So yeah.
Michelle has another really good point that, they do well visits where they just go to confirm that everything is okay, so that
Yeah.
Shadow isn't getting serious stuff done every visit. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a good idea if you can get in with your vet like that. Um,
Yeah.
so Elaine is working on communication with Kamala. So she's got Kamala's vet's picture on her tablet, so she knows, what she looks like. So that's kind of cool. And Jody has summed it up right here. She says, "Please be kind to your vet."
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so thank you again, and we will be having you back again if you'll join us, because there's so much. We could do one talk on poop. We could talk. I mean,
I know.
there's so much
So,
that we can do.
so much.
So, and if you had fun, then we would love to have you back again.
Yeah.
So,
This was
thank you.
this was such a pleasure, and you have a really strong support group that they know their bird stuff. That's really
We do.
refreshing.
The gang here is really good. And Frank, from Long Island says, 100% wants you back. So, and Carrie says, thank you. Tiffany says, thank you. Um, and if she wants to talk poop, there we go. So all kinds of wonderful thank yous here. So again,
Oh,
I appreciate you being on. I know you weren't so sure, at the beginning, not tonight, but in just about the idea in general. So thank you.
yeah.
Um, I just want to remind everybody, if that you have somebody in mind that you would like to hear from on Flock Talk, just reach out to me, let me know, send me a message. I will do my best to make it happen. And I will see you guys next week, same time. And Dr. Paulette, thank you again. And we'll be talking more.
For sure. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Thanks, you too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.